This Godly Play story is copyrighted by Church Publishers. Today we hear about the greatest parable. Look, here is the Annunciation. And here is the Transfiguration. And here is the Resurrection. These moments of God's presence are like a beginning, a middle, and an end of the story. But this story never really ends. In many ways, it's still going on today. Here, the angel Gabriel announced to Mary that she would be the mother of God. God overshadowed her, and the baby was born. Now here is rejection at home, a kind of blindness. Here is the calling of the disciples. And here is Jesus blessing and teaching. Here is Jesus feeding the 5,000. And here is Jesus teaching about the Sabbath and the law. All of this happened near Jesus' home in the north, where Nazareth and the Sea of Galilee still are today. As his time in Galilee was drawing to a close, Jesus climbed a mountain with 3 of his disciples. And there they saw Moses and Elijah standing with Jesus until a cloud overshadowed them. And when the cloud was gone, only Jesus was there. And he led the 3 disciples down the mountain. And Jesus and the 12 turned toward Jerusalem for the last time. And here are some of the things that happened on the way. Jesus and his disciples went south, and then they headed west. They walked along what was called the Pilgrim's Path. And they entered into Jericho, which is one of the oldest cities in the world. And as they went into the city, a blind man started calling from the side of the road, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." The blind man was named Bartimaeus. People tried to keep him quiet, but Jesus stopped and said, "Call him over." And the disciples did. And Bartimaeus sprang up and made his way towards the sound of Jesus' voice. And Jesus asked, "What do you want?" And Bartimaeus said, "I want to see." And Jesus said, Go your way. Your faith has made you well. And Bartimaeus did not go his own way, but he followed Jesus on towards Jerusalem, because now he could truly see. Now, as Jesus and the 12 moved towards Jerusalem, people followed them, and sometimes mothers and fathers would bring their children to be blessed. You can see Jesus noticing a mother coming down the road with her children, while the disciples are looking at something else. One time when children were brought to him, the disciples tried to push them away. Perhaps they didn't want the children to bother Jesus, and some say Jesus was indignant, very angry. It wasn't right. He said to the disciples, "Let the children come to me and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." He then laid his hands on the children and blessed them. Another time he said that if you welcome children, you welcome him and the one who sent him. He meant that welcoming children was a way to know God. Now, while Jesus and the disciples walked toward Jerusalem, they were followed not only by people who loved him, but also by Pharisees and Sadducees who did not. They were worried about what Jesus was saying, so they asked him questions to see if he would say something against the Torah, the law of Moses. They cared a lot about the Torah, so they wanted to be sure that Jesus followed its rules and the ways of its stories. One day, a lawyer asked Jesus what the greatest commandment was. Now, this was a trick because all of the commandments were important. But Jesus said that the way to think about it is this: you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And this is the first commandment. And the second is also about love. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said that these two laws contain not only everything written in the law, but also the prophets. One of the scribes said to Jesus that he had answered truly. And the Pharisees and the Sadducees went away impressed. Now, when Jesus and the disciples passed through Jericho on the way to Jerusalem, they also met Zacchaeus. Now, Zacchaeus was a very rich man. He was a tax collector, which meant he took money from his neighbors for the Romans. And people did not like him because he was a tax collector. Zacchaeus had heard that Jesus was coming. And since he was not very tall, he climbed up in a sycamore tree to see Jesus passing by. Something drew him to Jesus. And when Jesus walked by, he saw Zacchaeus in the tree. So he called to him, "Come down quickly. I will stay with you today." Now, the people did not know why Jesus was going to go to Zacchaeus' house. They were confused and upset because they thought Zacchaeus was a sinner. Zacchaeus also did not know why Jesus was coming to his house. All he knew was that he was very grateful and that he saw his life in a new way. Something had changed. He gave half of his goods to the poor, and for every piece of money he had stolen from his neighbors, he gave back 4. Jesus said, "Today, salvation has come to this house." And they enjoyed being together around the table, despite what people had said. This was a kind of Holy Communion. Now the journey to Jerusalem was almost over, and Jesus stayed nearby to rest at the house in Bethany of Simon the leper. And they were having supper when a woman, no one knew who she was, came in carrying a beautiful alabaster jar of very expensive perfume. She went right up to Jesus and she poured it on his head. This was like another time when Mary poured ointment on Jesus' feet and dried them with her hair. But that was at Mary and Martha's house in Bethany. They lived with their brother Lazarus, who had been raised from the dead by Jesus. Martha was making supper when her sister Mary poured the soothing ointment on Jesus' hot and dusty feet. But at Simon's house, the disciples were angry with the unknown woman and her alabaster jar. Why waste this? It could have been sold and the money given to the poor. Jesus said something like this to them. Why do you trouble the woman? She has done something beautiful. It is like a blessing. You will always have the poor with you, and you can show kindness to them whenever you wish, but you will not always have me with you. She has done what she could. She has anointed me for burial. And when my story is told, her story will also be told, for she has done a great thing. And everyone was silent. Jesus must have wiped away the oil that had run down his face. They finished their meal, and the unknown woman went away. I wonder what goes in this space.